I mean, at the time, people were talking about him like he was going to score a ton of goals.
Everyone that goes second overall, though. You see the draft coverage. Some guy that goes 148th, he's compared to Bobby Orr. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it always is. This kid, what a steal. This guy's going to be unbelievable. I think he'll score 50 one day. That's just the way they
I just wonder, like, when does it
scout.
get to you just change the coach? Because, like, how many of these other guys can you actually trade? Like, it's nice to come out and say, yeah, we want to trade this guy. It's like, yeah, look at his contract. Look at his age. Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, but is it fair to the coach? You know, like that's at some point you're like, is it the coach's fault that he can't get these guys
It
going?
often isn't, right?
Are they as fast as they were? You know, I watch them. They don't look like they're flying around the ice. You know, then they've signed their goaltender to a massive deal, which, you know, I think he's a really good goalie, obviously. But this team, like I at times I read comments or I talk to friends who are like, this Rangers team has done so well. Like, what have they done?
They won the President's Trophy.
President's Trophy. You know, that doesn't mean Stanley Cup. Like, it's. I don't want to dismiss it, but they haven't won anything. You know, this isn't like they're breaking up the Tampa Bay Lightning from, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, or the Avalanche or the Blackhawks or the Kings. Like, they're not dismantling a juggernaut that's just rolled over teams for, you know, 2-3 years, Jonas. This is a team that, yeah, they won the President's Trophy, but if you watched them in the playoffs last year, what's the word? I would use the word soft or not competitive enough. That's how I define them in their playoffs last year. So, you know, what is Chris Drury dismantling? You know, what is everybody upset about? You haven't really won anything as a group.
It's a very good question, especially when you consider how good that goalie is and how much he can mask and what Shesterkin has done. Like, when they were in the conference final a couple of years ago, that was his MVP year. Like, he was so good. I'm sure if you went back and looked at it, was it just him? Like, I'm sure other players contributed. Adam Fox is a really good player. Panarin's a really good player. Vinny Trocheck's a big game player, and he had a good playoff last year. Zibanejad, when he's in the mood or is feeling it and confident, he's a good player. But Struddy makes a good point. I mean, ultimately, you have a world-class goaltender and then a team that has talented players, but they haven't actually accomplished anything. If we're talking about the ultimate goal, like a Florida, like a Tampa, like a Pittsburgh.
See, what's interesting to me with what they've done is I know you, Hayes, like I'm sure Struddy agrees, we've looked at the team here and we'd be like, they should probably take like a little bit of a tougher stance with some of these issues and not just kind of let things be. And in New York, they've kind of like taken a blowtorch to everything, like in the summer with Barclay Goodrow, the reports, you know what I mean? Like, they've been a little bit more just burn everything down, and it's not like that works either. Maybe there's a middle ground that you have to take, like Tampa did with some of what they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
possibly.
Like I played with Chris Drury, guys. I played with him for a couple of years, and super nice guy. But everything he's ever touched, he's won. Right? He's won.
Right.
You know, as a player, he's won. He won as a little. I don't know if you guys know this. He was a Little League World Series champion. He won as a pitcher. And he was just throwing darts, I guess, in there. Like, you know, so this guy is a winner. So I think that he is programmed to win. And if he doesn't think that, you know, this team is ready to win, he's going to make changes. And he foreshadowed this, you know, in the offseason. We heard of the reports about Trouba. Then you mentioned the Barclay Goodrow. What did he have? 3 years left on his deal, and they put him on waivers. You know,
it's just, but can you do business that way continually without like getting this? I don't know that you can.
Well, that's a fair point, but maybe he feels that some pieces aren't going to help him win, so we'll move them out and try to find something that does help us more.
Well, he's also got a lunatic owner down there that doesn't help, right? James
Very
Dolan.
factor, yeah.
Although, to my knowledge, James Dolan has never resorted to scouting reports based on video games, which is a story that has come out of The Athletic today. Diana Rossini and others reporting on Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets. And my initial reaction to this was that it has to be fake. It can't actually be real. And then the more I thought about it throughout the day, this is probably exactly what I would expect out of a guy like Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, who is a disaster. And look at his team. Outside of the Sabres, who have missed the playoffs more than any other team in pro sports in North America, the second team with the longest drought is the New York Jets. And I think you always start at the top. You always look at the top, and it's Woody Johnson. That's why he's firing GMs midseason, coaches midseason, trying to get Aaron Rodgers in here, and you see how the way it plays out. So in The Athletic today, they are reporting a couple of different things. First and foremost, the former GM, Joe Douglas, I guess had spoken to somebody, I was supposed to be off the record, saying that he basically is taking orders from teenagers and that Woody Johnson's teenage sons have legit power within that organization. So the teenage kids are walking around saying, I want this guy. What's your draft board?
This guy sucks.
That guy sucks, which is a terrifying proposition, but also explains a lot. But that's just the beginning of it. The biggest story that came out of this in terms of a news headline, you couldn't purchase a better line to get people to click on your story. Apparently, according to Rossini, The Athletic, and others, Woody Johnson declined to trade for Jerry Jeudy. Now, Jeudy was originally in Denver. Now he's in Cleveland. He just passed 1,000 yards receiving. We saw him a couple of weeks ago. Where, what do you have, 2 or 3 touchdowns and like 250 yards receiving or whatever? Guy's been one of the 5 or 6 best wideouts in the league this year, and he's young and in his prime. Woody Johnson told his team to decline the trade because Judy's Madden rating was too low.
How do you like his awareness rating, whatever that is?
Again, that's how it all. I don't even know what his number was in the game. I also find it impossible to believe that Woody Johnson actually knew it. This screams the kids went to him and said, Jeudy stinks. I had him in franchise mode. He killed me. He's got no breakaway speed. His yards after the catch in the game suck. All the announcers chirp him. Like, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like Jerry Jeudy maybe or maybe not I can't say he got lucky because he's in Cleveland. You got to be careful. It's not like he's, in
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, he's not in Green Bay or something like that. The guy's in Cleveland. But he almost became a New York Jet if it weren't for Woody Johnson finding out that his Madden rating was too low. And I don't know how you guys feel about that. Struddy, you've been in video games before. You've played for owners before. How would you respond if you found out that your owner took issue with your rating in EA Sports and their NHL game?
Well, if owners went off my rating, I probably would never played in the NHL. So I don't think that my owners actually looked at it. But I just, and I'm not challenging, the reports or the reporters, but I can't imagine that was the reason. Maybe there is like something else and said, oh, by the way, also we heard that his rating's low on Madden, because that just seems like something out of a TV show or a movie where you're just like, making things up and trying to make it a fantasy league. So I as a player would be really frustrated to hear if this was in fact 100% the first reason. I'd be like, who's running my team? Like, what do you think Aaron Rodgers says? And when he's at or near the end of his career, when he hears that this is why he didn't, have this player, or this, I just, as a player, I'd just be like, who's running this?
I know.
This is not for me. And then potential free agents might be the same thing, Jonas.
You'd have to demand some answers, wouldn't you? Like, wouldn't you have the right to...
Aaron Rodgers demands some answers?
Here's the thing, though. Aaron Rodgers now, if he gets cut by this guy...
He becomes the hero?
No, I think it's even more embarrassing for him. If Woody Johnson looks at you and goes, you stink...
Well, did you see that? There was that in the story where it came out after, I think, Robert Saleh was fired, or maybe it was after the GM was fired, that Woody Johnson was talking about maybe benching Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he was.
And I think they said in the story, like, it was just kind of something he was floating out there to kind of like poke and prod. And it's like, really?
Yeah, allegedly or reportedly that as of like week 4, week 5, he was going to Douglas and Saleh saying, you got to sit this guy, which is, again, crazy considering all you've invested in Aaron Rodgers. But it speaks to just a complete gong show. And it's a perfect explanation of why the Jets are the Jets. Like, sometimes it's just not that complicated. And I've talked about them extensively. They don't play here. They're not my team. Yet I'm fascinated with them because they are such a debacle. Yet, again, it's not always about drafting. It's not always about player development. It's not always about game planning. It's not always about what you can go down the list. A lot of times it is very simple. Who is the owner? That will explain it. That's all you need to know. And Woody Johnson is the owner. You can't win if that guy's running the show.
Shorty, I actually bet that is what happened. Like, they went to the GM went to the owner and was like, we're going to trade for Jerry Jeudy. Woody's probably walking around the house. He's like, we're going to get Jerry Jeudy. And the kids are like, no.
Yeah, he sucks.
He sucks. And then
Leafs facing center crisis amid injuries, eyeing trade market for solutions. As the Toronto Maple Leafs battle through a growing injury list and a suspension, their lack of depth at the center position has become a glaring issue. According to Sportsnet's Elliotte Friedman in his latest 32 Thoughts article, the Leafs are among the teams exploring trade options to bolster their lineup. This effort is coming amid increasing competition from teams like the Chicago Blackhawks and Nashville Predators, who have also set their sights on improving their center depth. Friedman didn't mince words about the Leafs' predicament. The teams currently focusing on centers, including Chicago and Nashville, must consider when others will enter the market. Toronto will undoubtedly be one of those teams, he wrote. While the Blackhawks and Predators may have an edge in terms of cap space and assets, the Leafs remain a team to watch as the season progresses. The Leafs situation is urgent, with up to 7 forwards currently unavailable due to injury or suspension. Ryan Reeves is serving a 5-game suspension, while key players like Austin Matthews, upper body, Matthew Knies, upper body, Kaje Jarnkrok, groin/sports hernia, David Kampf, lower body, Max Domi, lower body, and Max Pacioretty, lower body, are all sidelined. The team has even considered temporarily shifting Mitch Marner to the center position, highlighting the severity of their depth issues. This isn't just a short-term concern for the Leafs. Depth at center has been a persistent challenge for the team, and while stopgap solutions like Marner could help in the interim, the front office appears keen to explore longer-term fixes. For fans of the blue and white, this has been a recurring theme. The Leafs' center depth often becomes a problem at the worst possible times. James Myrtle of The Athletic recently added more fuel to the speculation, naming several potential trade targets who could help the Leafs address their issues. Among them is Ryan O'Reilly, a familiar name for Toronto fans. O'Reilly, who signed a 4-year, $18 million deal with Nashville in 2023, might be a trade candidate if the Predators' underwhelming start to the season, 6-11-3, 31st in the league, prompts a rebuild. However, his steep price tag and history with the Leafs, including rejecting a free agency offer less than 2 years ago, make this a complex and potentially unlikely move. Other names mentioned by Myrtle include former Leaf Nazem Kadri, currently with Calgary, as well as players like Michael Granlund, Nick Jugstad, Brock Nelson, Yanni Gourde, Trent Frederick, Radek Faksa, and Sean Kuraly. While some of these options seem more plausible than others, it's clear that general manager Brad Treliving will need to get creative to find the right piece without mortgaging the team's future. Cap space remains one of the biggest obstacles for the Leafs. Unlike teams like Chicago and Nashville, which have more flexibility and assets, Toronto is walking a financial tightrope. As Friedman noted, competition will intensify as cap-constrained teams strive to create room. For the Leafs, that could mean waiting for the market to develop further, a risky move given their current needs. The situation also highlights the Leafs' ongoing struggle to build a roster that can withstand the grueling nature of an NHL season. Injuries are an inevitability in hockey, but Toronto's current predicament underscores the importance of depth, a quality the team has struggled to consistently maintain. Looking back on recent years, the Leafs have often leaned heavily on their star players, particularly Matthews, Marner, and William Nylander. While these players have delivered in spades, the lack of reliable depth options has left the team vulnerable in critical moments. The current crisis at center is merely the latest example of this recurring issue. Some fans have called for more aggressive moves from Treliving, arguing that now is the time to strike while the team's core is in its prime. Others, however, are more cautious, pointing to the dangers of overpaying for short-term fixes. Striking the right balance will be key, especially as the Leafs aim to keep their championship window open. Despite the challenges, there's no denying that Toronto has the talent to be a contender, provided they can patch up their lineup. The ongoing rumors and speculation surrounding potential trades show that the Leafs are at least exploring every avenue to strengthen their roster. For fans of the blue and white, this moment feels like a pivotal point in the season. With a lineup ravaged by injuries and a tough schedule ahead, the Leafs must act decisively to avoid falling behind in the standings. The addition of a dependable center could be the difference between weathering the storm or watching another season slip away. Whether it's O'Reilly, Kadri, or another surprise name, one thing is certain: the Leafs are under pressure to deliver. And for a fan base as passionate and loyal as Toronto's, there's no room for excuses. The time to act is now, and Leafs Nation is watching closely. As the trade deadline approaches, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Treliving pull off a move that solidifies the Leafs' status as a contender, or will the search for center depth become yet another chapter in the team's long history of what-ifs? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, it's never boring in Leafs land. As the Maple Leafs navigate this critical juncture, their fan base remains as vocal as ever. Toronto is a city that breathes hockey, and the pressure on Brad Treliving to make the right moves is immense. Every decision he makes, or doesn't make, will be scrutinized, from talk radio to social media, where Leafs Nation is already debating the merits of the various names being floated as potential trade targets. Among the louder debates is whether the team should prioritize a high-profile acquisition like Ryan O'Reilly or Nazem Kadri, or focus on a lower-cost, reliable center who can fill a supporting role without costing too many future assets. While O'Reilly's leadership and playoff experience make him an attractive option, his contract and recent history with the Leafs add layers of complexity to any potential reunion. Similarly, Kadri's gritty, two-way playstyle remains a fan favorite, but his cap hit and availability might render him an unrealistic target. Another factor complicating the Leafs situation is their tight salary cap. While Chicago and Nashville can make moves with relative ease due to their financial flexibility, Toronto must navigate a labyrinth of constraints to make any trade work. This likely means including salary retention or moving existing contracts to make room, which could drive up the cost of any potential deal. The question then becomes, how much are the Leafs willing to sacrifice to address their immediate needs? One potential trade partner generating buzz is the Seattle Kraken. Yanni Gourde, a dependable two-way center, has been mentioned as a possible target. Gourde's versatility and championship pedigree from his time with Tampa Bay make him an appealing option. Seattle, however, is in playoff contention and may not be inclined to part with a key piece unless the Leafs can provide a substantial return. Another intriguing name is Brock Nelson of the New York Islanders. Nelson is a consistent scorer and reliable faceoff-man, qualities that would undoubtedly bolster Toronto's center depth. However, the Islanders are notoriously cautious when it comes to trades, and prying Nelson away would likely require a significant package, including picks or prospects that the Leafs may be hesitant to part with. For all the trade talk, some analysts believe the solution might come from within. Sheldon Keefe has shown a willingness to experiment with his lineup, and players like Pontus Holmberg or Fraser Minton could be given an opportunity to step up. While relying on less experienced players carries risks, it might be the Leafs' only option if the trade market proves too costly or slow to develop. Adding to the Leafs' urgency is the timing. The Atlantic Division remains one of the toughest in the league, with teams like Boston, Florida, and Tampa Bay continuing to dominate. Any prolonged slump could see Toronto slip further down the standings, putting their playoff hopes in jeopardy. For a team with Stanley Cup aspirations, failing to address their weaknesses could have catastrophic consequences. Brad Treliving's history as a general manager suggests he's not afraid to make bold moves. His time with the Calgary Flames was marked by blockbuster trades, including the acquisition of Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar in the Matthew Tkachuk deal. Leafs fans hope he brings that same decisiveness to Toronto, especially as the trade deadline looms. Beyond the immediate need for a center, this situation underscores a broader issue with the Leafs roster construction. Depth has been a perennial concern, and while Toronto boasts some of the league's top-end talent, their reliance on a handful of stars has left them vulnerable in moments like this. Moving forward, addressing this imbalance must be a priority for the front office if the team is to achieve sustained success. As the Leafs head into a critical stretch of the season, the next few weeks could define their trajectory.